Hey, Stickley.
We're now live streaming, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to council meeting for Wednesday, June the 24th. It's hard to believe that date. We want to welcome everyone, and today's council meeting is an electronic meeting held during an emergency pursuant to sections 238 of the Municipal Act. And of course, due to efforts contained to protect all individuals, our facilities are not open to the public. So our meetings are all done, as we said, on an electronic basis. The public may submit written correspondence regarding agenda matters by email to the clerk at richmond.ca, and all written correspondence received by 12 on the day before will be included in the agenda, and any correspondence received yesterday after the deadline will be sent electronically to members of council. Also, delegations, since April 22, the public have been able to appear as an electronic delegate by video conference or by telephone, and delegates are reminded to mute your, sometimes we have to remind ourselves to do that, mute your microphone or phone and turn off the video until you are speaking. So at this point in time, we are going to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to rise for the national anthem. Thank you. I will now ask if there is any council announcements that anyone wish to make. Members of council? Seeing none at this point in time. I'm trying to see everybody. All right, thank you. And now, introduction of emergency time sensitive matters. We actually have two for this morning. Yes, Councilor Barros, you have one of them.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the clerk has the wording of the motion. It is just a housekeeping, some wording on the motion that council made in regard to 57 Beaufort Hills Road. So I would just like to bring that up later in the meeting as the minutes are in front of us today.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, we're going to do them one at a time, each one to determine.
Mr. Mayor,
members of council will hear them.
Mr. Mayor, I actually, if you allow me, I'll bring up the motion on the screen because I was given advance notice of two items that could be added, and then we could just simply have a mover and seconder to add these items.
Both items.
Both items as listed here to the agenda.
Okay, so this is not to discuss the matter, just to getting it
This
on
is
the
just to get
agenda.
it, yes.
Okay, so Councillor Barros has indicated he would move the, those. Is there a seconder for that, please? Just to get us, we're not discussing the outline, we're trying to add it to the budget. Is there a second?
I would ask Councillor Liu to second that.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Councillor Liu. Okay, all those in favor to add these to the opposed? Fine, carried. Thank you. They will go on the agenda. In what area? We have time sensitive, November 14th. Okay, thank you. All right. All right, we have what am I doing? Agenda items, 12 agenda items, 3 presentations, 2 delegations, and 11 bylaws. There are no closed session items. So can I have a mover and a seconder for adoption of the agenda for this morning? Councillor Silovitz, Councillor Chan. Any comments? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Any members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk. Our next item is the adoption of previous council minutes. There are 3 minutes. I will repeat them and I'll ask for one mover and seconder. Council public meeting 2220 on June 3rd. Council meeting 2320 on June 10th. And special council meeting on June 10th, 2020. Can I have a mover and a seconder for both those previous council minutes? Councilor DePaula, Councilor Perrell. All those in favor? No, opposed, carried. Thank you. Okay, identification of items requiring separate discussion. I know I have with the 2 delegations. I also have one for 1210, the noise bylaw. Actually, I have more than one, but Councillor Chan was the first call by, I know, and then so we'll use that one. Is there any other items that members of council wish to withdraw for discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Chan, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to put pull item 12.10, 12.10
I
on
just
the
did.
noise bylaw.
I just did on your behalf.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You had said in the emails we were flying around.
Okay,
That's okay.
thank you.
Not a problem. Is there any others? Any other members of council wish to have? Adoption of the remainder identified. So we have, that's one item. So now we want to move forward and adopt the remainder of the.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I was trying to indicate, sorry. I was trying to indicate earlier, we just moved the council public meeting minutes, but my emergency time sensitive motion was in regards to the council public minutes. Are we going to be later reconsidering them? Or how were you dealing with that? I apologize, I wasn't able to.
The motion that you have includes that, if I understand it, read it. So, Mr. Clerk, he has the actual motion.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, because of the way the procedure bylaw is written and set up, and the purpose of approval of minutes, while they're related, your item that you brought forward will actually be dealt with as a separate item under emergency and time sensitive matters.
Okay, so I just want to be sure procedurally we're fine because we just moved the minutes.
The minutes, yes. So through Mr. Mayor.
We're going to perhaps alter them later.
So through Mr. Mayor, the approval of the minutes is just to confirm that they are an accurate reflection of what happened at the meeting. It's not to give any further weight to any activity taken at that particular meeting. It's
Very
just
good.
to confirm that it's an accurate.
I just wanted to proceed with an abundance of caution, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Clerk.
I appreciate that.
So if I may, Mayor, so can we go through that again? So what exactly is the record going to show?
The minutes.
The record, so it's gonna show the minutes of the meeting, and then we're gonna go through a time-sensitive process, and then that's also gonna show at next council meeting, or when we approve that, or how is that done exactly?
Okay, back again.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so council has already approved the minutes from all the previous meetings. That's just for errors and omissions and an accurate record. Assuming council passes a motion today, that will be the decision of council at this meeting. And those minutes will then, of course, be brought forward for a further confirmation that council has actually just confirmed that they are an accurate record of the decision made today.
Okay, so there will be a record of the public meeting that took place officially, correct?
Yes, yes.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
No, no problem. Okay, so I need a move and a seconder for adopting the remainder of agenda items without dealing with them. Councilor Pirelli, Councilor Silovitz, any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. There are no public hearings at this point in time. We go to presentations at this point in time and call on Darlene Joslin, Acting Commissioner of Community Services. Ms. Joslin, and we do have, there we go, it's on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure to be in front of you today as we bring forward staff's plans in regards to the stage 2 reopening provincial order due to the pandemic. Before I start on the presentation, I'm aware council received a copy yesterday, but I do want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the staff within the Community Services Department. The Community Services Department has been fully functioning and operating since the beginning of this COVID-19. Whether it's fire that's been leading us through the pandemic process, bylaw who's been maintaining order and keeping us in line and compliant with the provincial orders, and in our parks and recreation sections specifically, who have had an extremely challenging time over the last little while trying to reopen facilities that they've already closed. And I can attest to the countless number of decisions and issues and challenges and questions that staff have had to deal with over the last number of weeks, in particular as we move forward in stage 2. A lot of them are joining us today from the Community Services Department as we walk you through our presentation. Next slide, Ryan, please. So as council's aware, the provincial government announced that York Region was good to go through stage 2 of reopening effective on June 19th. It is a regional approach, and so we were held back a little bit, but we're able to proceed. Public health, of course, remains a top priority as more services begin to open. As Dr. Kurji had stated earlier on when we started talking about stage 2 is not a return to normal. It's a cautious resumption of some activities with care and protection. And just because stage 2 outlines services that can reopen, it does not necessarily mean that you must reopen those services. Next slide. In summary, from a parks perspective, this list provides you the services that can open in this stage, including splash pads, sports field for training, which means no scrimmages, no games, park spaces for small gatherings of 10, and park spaces for wedding and funerals, actually, for up to 50 people. Next slide. The services that can reopen in recreation are summer camp, although there are extreme and strict guidelines that go along with that. Indoor pools, excluding wave pools, water slide features, saunas, and swirl pools, and very limited programming. Community centers that would provide space for the summer programs that are to be offered. However, there's no access to change rooms, kitchens, etc. Heritage Center museums and outdoor adventure programs and activities, which includes in Richmond Hill our ropes course. Next slide. What remains closed in stage 2 are playgrounds and play structures, outdoor fitness equipment, fitness centers, arenas, performing arts center, the indoor sports centers, which would be Richmond Green in our case, festival and events, and concerts and sporting events. Next slide. So the community services staff have been undertaking a pretty comprehensive process over the last month or so related to stage 2, have been participating with a number of network groups, both within the York Region municipalities and within the provincial, with senior leaders across the province, as facilitated by Parks and Recreation Ontario, that have led us to some of the decisions that we've come to in front of council with today. So in order for us to make those decisions, the gradual phased-in approach that is informed by public health is paramount for our recommendations, a thorough review of the province's guidance documents, and also a thorough review of the Life Saving Society recommendations specifically for pools. We've had communication and collaboration with a number of our community groups and organizations to ensure that we're working with them on their reopening activity plans to ensure they are in compliance with the provincial order. And we've developed a number of thorough reopening protocol documents as it pertains to our facilities. We've continued to monitor the amenities that we did open in stage 1, that we will open in stage 2, and the involving COVID pandemic recommendations. And staff safety has always been paramount in the decisions that we've made. Next slide. So getting on to specifics within the park structure, splash pads is the number one park that we're opening. We currently have an inventory of 15 splash pads. 3 of them require testing every 4 hours. We have recirculated water splash pads like Lake Wilcox that are much more complex. We started to open those splash pads on Friday, June 19th, and 10 of those are currently opening and operating with the appropriate signage and physical distancing measures in place at those sites. The recirculation pads like Lake Wilcox, Crosby Park, Richvale will take a little bit longer to reopen. So staff are currently working on those, and we hope to have everything in place for those by the end of this week. So they're open and operating for the weekend. Lake Wilcox is a concern for us of staff. It has very heavy use. If this past weekend was any indication, when I was by there, it was extremely busy. If overcrowding becomes an issue within that park and there's heavy use on that splash pad, we are recommending that we're going to be bringing back 6 of our summer students so that we can put a monitor on that site. It operates 7 days a week and bringing staff in to do shift work through that process, including evenings and weekends. Next slide, please. Sports fields is our baseball diamonds and our soccer pitches. They are allowed to be open for permitting purposes. Again, no games, no scrimmages allowed. So very restrictive in terms of what the use are on those sites. We commenced our reactivation plans with our local youth or sport organizations, including Phoenix, Richmond Hill Minor Ball, Richmond Hill Soccer Club, and the Oak Ridges Soccer Club, and worked with them to get their comprehensive activity plan, reopening plans done and determine what sort of inventory they're looking for. Based on the inventory that they required, then we would be looking at increasing our service level to support that. Through the COVID initiative, we did lower our service levels on our sports fields, which meant that we were not, our grass cutting, our lining, those kinds of things were reduced because there was nobody on the park. So we need to increase that to accommodate. This week, we'll also be sending out a notice to all the other sport groups, including our adult level of play and our commercial groups, to see what their interest is in permitting these fields for training purpose only. And again, we'll be working with those groups on their activity protocols and putting some monitoring systems in place to ensure that they're compliant. Next slide. The park spaces, the government did announce that we could open up park spaces for wedding and funeral services. Wedding services are allowed and funerals are allowed for up to 50 people. In the first phase of that, staff are opening up the permitting and the site at Richmond Green. Staff are already, we have crews on the Richmond Green site already that work there 7 days a week for monitoring. The public washrooms are available, and there's a restricted area within that park to accommodate those wedding services. The permit holders will be responsible to ensure that they're practicing, the requirements of the provincial government, and we're giving them copies of the wedding protocols that are in place. We will see how we do at Richmond Green Park, and then we can phase in other sites as our demand requires us to. And on the sports fields and on the wedding services, et cetera, our 2020 user fees will apply. So they will have to get a permit to be on those parks. That's the end of the parks piece. Before I go to recreation, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to hold questions till the end or if you want to deal with parks now and as we move into recreation, whatever your pleasure is.
I was going to say, let's finish the both, and then we can look for questions at that point in time.
Okay, great. So next slide, Ryan. In terms of recreation summer programming, staff actually worked on 4 options very comprehensively, lots of meetings, discussions, clarification with the province, legal clarification on how we can proceed with implementing some summer programming options for our residents. The 4 options we worked on were virtual programming, a pop-up park program, activity kits, and an in-person kind of your traditional, 6 to 8 hour per day drop your child off at camp process. Going through our comprehensive review of that, staff are recommending that the in-person 6 to 8 hour drop off your child camp not be implemented at this point in time, but there are 3 alternative options that we are going to be providing our residents as we get started. They will all take effect on July 20th. The first being virtual programming, where we offer online recreation and culture type camp activities that are led by our recreation staff. Our full-time education and program coordinator at the theater has been working hard on this program. So we're offering options in theater, poetry, art, and our junior leader in training program, because our junior leader in training program is where we get our future leaders for all of our recreation programs. So we do want to be able to provide that opportunity for teens. And we'll also be offering a general camp-like activity virtual program. The second opportunity we'd like to offer is activity kits for curbside pickup. So staff have been working on putting kits together that include activity sheets and arts and craft supplies, etc., that parents can purchase and do a curbside pickup and take home and implement those camp activities with their children in their own home site. And the third option, next slide, Ryan, please. The third option is a PopUp, parks playground program, again, effective July 20th, where we do have, it'll be offered at Rollinson Park. We will have recreation staff on site that will lead those participants through a variety of activities. Parents and or caregivers of the children are required to remain on site to assist us with any personal needs, behavioral issues, physical distancing, those types of things. But that pop-up park program happens outside. And where public washrooms are available and hand washing stations can be provided. So we'll start with that parks play. It's like a playground program for those of you that ever experienced that when you were a child. So those are our recommendations on the summer camp program. Next slide. The traditional summer camp experience was something that we looked at extremely comprehensively with all of the public health department, the provincial senior leaders, and senior leaders within York Region. And there's no cookie cutter for how any municipality is delivering camp at this point. But the majority of municipalities are not offering an in-person camp. The City of Toronto is offering some camp spaces, but in speaking to their commissioner and their directors, the activities are predominantly outdoor. So municipalities are at various degrees of this, but staff in Richmond Hill are recommending the 3 options that we've put in front of you today. Next slide. It was a surprise to staff that the announcement by the province included indoor pools. We were expecting splash pads and we were expecting outdoor pools, but we were not expecting indoor pools to be in the mix. In fact, the provincial guidelines for the reopening measures for indoor pools have not yet been released. The Life Saving Society has released their tips, but the province has not released their expectations. Staff recommend that we consider reopening our indoor pools with a very slow and gradual process. The reopening, although they announced the reopening of indoor pools, there's extreme restrictions on them. So we are not allowed to open any water features such as slides, saunas, diving boards. We are not permitted to have group lessons. We're only permitted to run perhaps things for competitive clubs, competitive sport. So our recommendation in our first phase of reopening is to work with the Richmond Hill Aquatic Club to reopen Centennial Pool, maybe at some point in mid to late August for their club activities. And we can do that with our full-time staff team, where we don't have to recall part-time staff to do the guarding. We can work with our full-time staff and the qualified staff within and coaches within the club itself. Centennial Pool is the obvious site for us, as it's a standalone facility. It does not house any of the water features, if you will, that some of our bigger sites do, and would be a good pilot test for us to open that. In speaking with our peers in the City of Toronto and within York Region, they are focusing on outdoor sites. They're focusing on their splash pads and their outdoor pools. Richmond Hill does not have an outdoor pool. Markham is going to be opening the Pan Am Center strictly for their competitive swim club at some point, the end of July or early August. And Vaughan is not opening anything. They're not opening, they have an outdoor pool. They're not opening it. They're not opening their indoor site either. So that's our very slow, gradual pilot for an indoor pool site. Next slide, please. He also had included community centers in his order, but you really had to read, interpret what that means. And what that means is that the community centers, of course, need to open where you're opening those programs that he's allowing, like summer programs and indoor pools. So our recommendation is to keep our community centers closed to the public. And we only allow them to open where we're needing them to support the park program. So for staff's washroom and storage of supplies, the public washrooms at Richmond Green will suffice for the participants. And that when we open up a Centennial Pool, obviously we need to open up that center itself. I will say, this one is tricky. For council's information, when it became evidently clear that COVID was in for the long haul, we drained our pools. So our pools sit empty, our arenas have no ice, and all of our staff, with full-time staff within the Recreation and Culture Division, predominantly have been redeployed to parks operations. So it will take us time to put the water back in Centennial Pool, get staff trained, get the process in place, and that's why we're suggesting what we are. Next slide. They did put in the order that heritage centers and museums can reopen with very strict protocols in place. The Richmond Hill Heritage Center on Church Street is undergoing interior construction in the fall that we had approved through the budget process. So that project is proceeding. So staff are recommending that that center remain closed for the rest of the year. Any programs, if we're allowed to operate any sort of recreation program or educational program come the fall, from a heritage perspective, then staff can deliver those at alternative sites and not have to use the Heritage Center Museum. Next slide. The other recreation activity in the order was outdoor adventure activities, and Richmond Hill has a ropes course that's located at the Eyre Homestead. However, stage 2 does not allow for us to access locker rooms, only allows the indoor facility to be used for washrooms. And due to the major equipment that we have on that site in terms of all our rock climbing apparatus, our rigid sanitizing of equipment, and the fact that we've had that building closed for financial efficiencies purposes as well, staff are recommending that we do not run the ropes course for the summer of 2020. Next slide. The last opening message was regarding festival and events, which are not permitted in stage 2. The city golf tournament, we are recommending that it not proceed. We've been in contact with Cardinal, who are not comfortable with committing to any sort of tournament play. They're not permitted to run tournament play at this point. So we'll suspend the city golf tournament until 2021. In terms of the Santa Claus parade, we have not made a decision on full out cancellation yet, but we are working on plans to do something different in terms of that parade, including a drive-through experience and some virtual programming. So we'll be able to report back to council on how those plans are unfolding after the summer months. The fire prevention open house in October is canceled, and the chief and his staff will work on some virtual programming for fire prevention, and the recreation staff will assist them through that. In the stage 2 document that we reviewed, next slide, Ryan, please, is what's coming in stage 3. Whenever that may be announced, Ontario will consider, again, opening all of our indoor and outdoor recreation facilities, which would include our playgrounds and our play structures, our performing arts center with restricted seating, our arenas, our fitness facilities and studios, gyms and indoor sport facilities, training for indoor sport teams and individual high contact sports. So staff are currently starting to work on the stage 3 reopening plan so that we are informed and ready to make those recommendations to council at the appropriate time. And I wanted to bring to your attention that in the document, he did make a statement that large public gatherings such as concerts, sporting events, likely festivals and events will continue to be restricted for this foreseeable future. And you're seeing a lot of the fall large festivals and concerts and things in and around the GTA being canceled at this point. So that is, Mr. Mayor, the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you very much, Darlene. Questions? Mr. Silovitz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll gladly move to receive the presentation with thanks. To Acting Commissioner Jocelyn, my thanks on behalf of all Ward 5 residents. As their councillor, I want to truly thank you and all of our community services staff. You have done an unbelievable job in making sure that our city continues to run recreation and sports-wise in a very, very difficult time. I fully agree with everything that is stated in your presentation, and I want to thank you for bringing us such a comprehensive document. It lays out everything very clearly for, as far as I'm concerned, for council as well as for our residents. While 2020 is probably a year we'll all be glad to say goodbye to. We can only hope that 2021 is going to be better, although at this point, who knows? I fully agree with the opening, restricting the pool openings to Centennial, and with canceling any kind of summer camps. I was privy to a startling story yesterday about a 9-year-old child who requires a double lung heart transplant as a result of horrific complications from COVID-19. So for us to even contemplate that children, teenagers, and young adults are not compromised or cannot be compromised, that is an error. So I believe we are certainly setting the ground here for something that is very, very laudable and commendable. So once again, thank you, and to all staff, all community staff online, thank you for everything that you've done. You are truly the vanguard of our city at the moment, and from community recreation operations, you're the glue holding us together right now. So thank you, Acting Commissioner Jocelyn, and I look forward to hearing further comments.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other issues? Councillor West? Anyone else? I can see some hands. Okay, go ahead, Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Acting Commissioner Jocelyn. That was an extremely comprehensive and fact-filled presentation. And I have had the pleasure of speaking to you a number of times over the last little while about various issues that were contained in this report. So I'm quite versed in the complexities that you're dealing with right now and the decisions that you've come to. Can I just ask for, I think maybe you skipped a little bit over the slide number 17 at the bottom where we're talking about city-run events and so on. Can I just ensure that we heard everything that we were supposed to hear about that? Could we go back to that for a minute? Slide 17. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. It's on the screen.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I did omit the fourth bullet there, that staff were recommending that city and community-led festivals and events that require permits on city property be canceled up to September 30th. So that complies with the stage 2 order that we have. And then I'm hopeful come the end of the summer or September, when council comes back into session, that we'll be in front of you again with any further development on stage 2 and 3. But it is important to note that you know, our Premier has stated a number of times that large gatherings that typically come with festival and events will be the very last thing on his radar as he's trying to reopen the province.
Okay, thank you. I just felt that you maybe have skipped over that, so I appreciate the added clarity. I think at the very beginning of your presentation, you made the point that, I mean, regardless of anybody's feelings on any of these decisions, I mean, I do believe that everybody can agree that we are looking at public health as being the top priority here. I think it is very important for us to be cautious in our resumption, and you know, we need to make sure we're doing everything that we can. So I appreciate the approach. I'd also appreciate the approach about opening pools and arenas. You know, having said what I just said, I think it's also reasonable that when there is opportunities to open things up safely and in compliance with everything that we need to comply with, we do so. So I think it is reasonable that we use the opening of the pool as a dipping your toe in the water, excuse the pun, you know, as a pilot. And I think actually the same thing I'd like to see at some point, if possible, happen with arenas, because I do believe that there's opportunities for some arena-based activities to resume, like, for example, maybe figure skating. And I won't profess to know all the details about that, but I think that's more of an individual sport. So hopefully we can keep that on our radar. I think it's very, very important that this plan be communicated to our public, because I can assume that there's going to be a lot of questions about when things are opening. I mean, I'm getting them quite often. I'm sure other councillors are probably getting them as well. So I would really emphasize that our communication staff do double time on making sure that all of this is communicated comprehensively and extensively and frequently, because I think this will avoid a lot of questions from the public. Can you just remind me, I totally understand the complications about opening in-person camps. It is very, very difficult to keep young children, especially, away from each other. You know, in my time as a school teacher years ago, I get it. Can you just remind me though, what are other municipalities in York Region doing with in-person camps? I mean, not pop-up camps. I get that they're outdoors, but inside in-person camps. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Within the City of Toronto is running the full day drop your child off type of camp. Predominantly their activities are in their outdoor parks. Within the region of York, Markham is doing the same as Richmond Hill. We're doing the pop-up park programs. The only municipality in the region of York that's going to attempt the full day camp is the City of Vaughan. King City, Aurora, Newmarket, they're not running camp activities at all this summer. They're going to contemplate the pop-up park program that Richmond Hill is proposing. And we're working with Markham as well on that particular program. So again, it's really based on the individual municipalities' risk thermometer in terms of reopening these camps. With everything that we know, when you consider that the Minister of Education is not allowing the children back into classrooms, when you consider that it's taken this long for daycares to open, schools, classrooms, daycares are all operated with mature adults with years of education and training. Summer camps are delivered by 16-year-old high school students. So we took into consideration the challenges and the safety of both our staff and our participants. And to try to implement those physical distancing measures and hand washing measures and limited washroom access and lunch programs and a process for dropping children off and picking children up and where does that take place and outside and sharing of toys and sanitization of all of that. That combined with the fact that at the end of the day, should someone contract COVID, whether it's a staff member or a child, and they trace it back to that camp, no insurance covers us for that. The risk and liability is extreme. And we had our risk managers and our health and safety officers sitting with our staff, in addition to public health, as we went through these recommendations. So we looked at it from all aspects and felt that we want to provide something for the children to do. And we felt it was safest for all of us to do that in an outdoor environment where the parent or the caregiver is on site with staff should we run into any issues.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one last question, and if I may, and I don't expect that you'll necessarily have a definitive answer. I mean, if anything in this COVID situation that we can say is certain is that there's uncertainty as to what the future holds. If you'd asked me in March what we would be doing in June, this would not have been my answer. But what I would say, do you have any indication as to where we're going? You referenced stage 3, and it seems to me that that's a fairly distant thing, if I'm correct at this moment. But when will you be coming back to us to see what the future holds and what changes might be made? Like, are you planning on coming back in the fall for an update? Because I assume that by the time the fall hits, we will be looking at a slightly different plateau that we were reaching on this climb. So can we have some sense of where we're headed in terms of next steps?
Certainly. So we are, staff are beginning to work on stage 3 reopening reactivation plans for all of our activities. We're looking at our fall programs that we traditionally deliver within the walls of our recreation facilities to see what can we offer in the future, respecting physical distancing and all those rules. So we're going through that program, and we're going to be putting our fall programs up online. We're doing digital only so we can make last minute decisions. But of course, there's no crystal ball to know when this is going to happen. Our numbers, even as of this morning, are still, not going in as fast in the dropping direction as we'd like them to. We're working on our arena plan. It's interesting on the figure skating, although they allowed figure skating in stage 1, they didn't allow us to open our arenas until stage 3. And the figure skating was related to almost that pro level, that national, international person. I have lots of people calling me to, trying to look for arenas for practicing in. So all I can say to you, Councillor, is that we are working on those plans, and as soon as provincial announcements are made, we'll communicate with Council. And we're certainly working with our city manager and our ELT team who are steering the business resumption portion of this pandemic. These plans that I'm presenting to you today went through that team for review prior to coming to you today. So we'll continue to work forward on all of that. But as to when I'll be coming back as soon as more information rolls out from the province.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity. And thank you again to staff for all the work that you're doing. I think if you close your eyes and really contemplate all the details that have to go into any of these decisions, it's actually a little overwhelming. So I do understand that. So thank you.
I would just say too that Dr. Kurji has a lot of points to make in this process too. So he's always making sure that we are healthy, and anybody that we invite to re-enter will be healthy also. So it's hard to track. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, Councillor Liu, and then I'm sorry.
Councillor Munchausen, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Liu, or Councillor or Manchua, who's going ahead?
Yes, I'm just Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for all the great work, Darlene and your staff. Really, really, good decision. And I totally agree with our acting commissioner in regards to the decision of not having in-person summer camp. Yeah, that's. I don't think we don't even have mandatory face mask in Richmond Hill. So how can we do a physical in-person summer camp? Just a joke. Anyways, I just wanted some clarification. The 3 options. Are we supposed to choose one of 3s, or all 3s are going together? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the residents have the option to participate in any of the 3 or all 3.
Great. Okay. No, not picking. No, you're not picking one out of 3. Okay, great. The other thing is, I receive a lot of inquiries about our community center, and I think during these difficult times, one of the group that suffered the most are our seniors. And I understand that we are not able to open our community center, but lots of seniors ask me, what about the McConaughey Center? Is there a possibility that we can open the McConaughey Center for the seniors so that they can go in and play some board games, bridge, so and so? I don't know. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I got to get back to them, and just want to pick your brain, acting commissioner. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Seniors have been identified in this pandemic as one of the most vulnerable populations that are exposed. If exposed to this virus, the outcome could be severe. There are a number of municipalities in the province as they reopen look at their reopening plans for activities are only going up to the age of 65, and they're not recommending seniors in their first reopening plans in terms of the indoor pool piece. So I think with all due respect, I think it's important that we keep those community centers closed at this point in time, and that we really safely gauge our way through the reopening of programs and facilities specific to our senior population. So there will be further guidelines that will hopefully come to us, that we'll have an opportunity. We'll work with our provincial organization on their reopening suggestions for that as well. But I think through the summer, our recommendation is for now, those community centers should remain closed.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Okay, Councillor Munch. Councillor Munch.
Sorry, my mouse wasn't clicking there. Thank you for the report. Thank you for the information. My comment I'd like to say is in the presentation that was quite well laid out. In your verbal presentation, you were a little bit more detailed with regards to the number of centers, with regards to where you were going. Even now, in some of the responses that we're getting from some of the councillors, much more specific detail. I would very much like that detail, like I believe it was Councillor Liu who said that. Actually, it was Councillor West, excuse me, who said we need a detailed communication. So if the presentation is not quantified, then I would ask the notes that I took and some of the information that's getting, and obviously we can rewatch the video, but we want that information to be in writing. We'd like it documented and we'd like it promoted so that we can therefore go back and evaluate, because it's my position, we'll see if I'm right or not, that we actually want a second wave. It would show that what we did was correct on the administration side. You know, there's lots of debate around the world as to how to do this type of thing, especially today. So it's my expectation that we may see a second wave. It's my expectation is as we're going down here that we learn that. And then the more that we document it going forward, it's a way for us to remember and learn and evaluate how we're going. So I would like that detail that you've got, I assume it was written down somewhere, should be communicated out either in a press release or either with a follow-up to us so that the presentation is known to all of us, because myself, and I assume others may as well, are going to want to communicate this to others. And I would hate to have a transcribing error based upon a verbal presentation that was done inside. We don't want to have that. So my only comment is great presentation, nicely done. You know, I'm not gonna challenge what's said or not said on balance. I would say but the quantification of it is missing in the presentation, and that's something that clearly at this time is needed, because as Councillor West said, he's getting constituents, as am I, and I assume others as well, as he stated, are going to be getting and are continually getting in questions about that, and we need that information back so that we're all communicating the same message or a similar message, so that we can be much more effective and have really confidence in the community that we're serving. So that's my comments.
Okay. Or Councillor, who else did I have? DePaulo, sorry. Thank you. Go ahead. You're not.
Mute here, unmuting works better.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Jocelyn, for that report, that update. There's so much going on here, so many moving parts. I just one thing want to bring to your attention and ask if there is anything maybe being done. Lake Wilcox and Bond Lake, which was very not very frequently visited at all. Bond Lake is quite quiet. I think people from right across the GTA are seeking out open spaces. Okay. The first thing they're coming across in terms of a conservation lands that are open to with lakes is Wilcox and Bond Lake, and we are just getting inundated with perhaps our own residents, but I believe residents from all over the GTA parking up and down the streets and going to Lake Wilcox and Bond Lake. And is there a plan to monitor that or to do something to restrict those that are coming from other places and just open it up and definitely have it available for our residents, but to monitor the activity. There's fires being made, there's drinking going on at Bond Lake,
Oh,
there
yeah.
is fishing, and I don't know if it's a bylaw or police matter but it's unbelievable what's happening.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we're quite aware of the overcrowding that's starting to occur at Lake Wilcox. We have implemented some measures. We actually work with both bylaw and YRP. They're working jointly together to monitor the sites. Director Steele is on this call, so I'd like to call upon Tracy to make some comments. We are implementing paid parking for non-residents effective July 1st. Our marketing signage is going into that park this week. I have personally received one irate call regarding the parking from a City of Toronto resident. So so that goes to show you there. But Director Steele is online. Tracy, can you talk to council about what we're doing at Lake Wilcox?
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, the Lake Wilcox, we're working on the paid parking system, which we believe will help to control some of the crowds that are there. We also have ongoing monitoring, as Commissioner Jocelyn mentioned, from both YRP and city bylaw services, as well as POC's operations crews that are there during the week. With respect to Bond Lake, I would just remind everyone that Bond Lake is part of the Oak Ridges Corridor Conservation Reserve, which is lands that are owned by the province and managed by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. Just in the last few weeks, we're in constant communication with enforcement from Toronto and Region Conservation. And a couple of weeks ago, we were on a conference call with them trying to brainstorm how the management and operations within Bond Lake could be improved to try to do some things. That they're actually looking at watching our paid parking system for Lake Wilcox and going to see what happens there and potentially consider that for Bond Lake as well. And they're working at better controlling some of the crowds at the entry points as well.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Thanks for that. Yeah, it is Bond Lake even more of a concern because Lake Wilcox is more public, and there's no places to hide, but people are treating Bond Lake as though it's the Wild West, and it's just unbelievable the activity that's going on there. So thanks for your follow-up with that. And then, Mr. Mayor, while we're on the subject, I just want to make one other comment because I don't see any other point to do so in the agenda here today. But I'm really impressed by how well the Richmond Hill residents have responded to COVID-19 and the personal precautions they have undertaken, including our institutions. We're obviously all saddened by the fatalities across the region and the extraordinary living circumstances everyone has had to endure. There's been many personal sacrifices made and financial hardship experienced by far too many. We'll all be relieved when this is over. But we're making progress in Richmond Hill in particular. We've continued to demonstrate a high level of discipline and precaution to date, and doing so by following the direction of Ontario and regional medical officers of health. And I just don't want to deviate from the suggestions of our regional medical officers of health. The idea of making masks mandatory has been floated around. I think that sends the wrong signal. I think for us to deviate from the direction of our regional medical officer of health sets a precedent, and it may signal to some residents that there's a unique and higher level of risk in Richmond Hill compared to other municipalities who have not chosen to take the same action in York Region. So, the fact is that Richmond Hill is doing better than any other municipality in York Region. We have the lowest incidence of COVID-19 per 100,000 population. Of course, it's just not to suggest there's any competition or anything, but it would be we'd be at cross purposes to now suddenly assume a direction that's at odds with our chief medical officer of health. So, just for that reason, I can't support.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Okay.
That will be, okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Joslin, very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to, any other points? We've got two other presentations. So thank you very much. I appreciate that for coming out. And we'll move to our second presentation by Sharon Adams, Acting Commissioner of Corporate Financial Services, regarding city succession planning process.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you about the succession planning program at the city. I'd also like to thank my talent management and organizational development team for the work that they've done in pulling this program together. Next slide, please. So really, basically, what is succession planning? It's a process for identifying and developing new leaders so that they are ready to replace current leaders if they are to leave or move on. Succession planning also helps to identify key roles in an organization and the employees that are best suited to fill those roles in the future. And it helps us to identify what are the skills and knowledge that is needed within our organization, and what are our skill gaps, and how do we need to close those skill gaps. And why do organizations do succession planning? Basically, it's to ensure that we have the right leaders in place at the right time to fill the right roles, that they're up to speed as technology changes, as the work environment changes. So it's really about forward thinking to make sure that we have the right people in the right roles. It's also about attraction and retention. And especially if you look at millennials these days, for them, if organizations aren't developing them, aren't growing them, because their expectation is that they'll be moving to many, many organizations. So they're always looking at building their marketability, their skill sets, so that they're always marketable and that they're always current. And that is very key for us to retain staff. It's also really important to retain our staff. When someone leaves an organization, the cost of it is probably 2.5 times their salary. So it's the person who leaves the organization, it's all the knowledge that walks out of the door with them. And then you may even have people around them who hadn't thought about leaving the organization who leave. It could have impacts on morale, and then it's bringing new people in and then having to train them up. So it's really important that we focus on this. And again, it also reduces our recruiting costs. If we've got people internally developed who can move into the roles, then obviously our cost to go out and recruit externally is reduced. Our next slide, please. What does our process look like at the city? So we've got assessment tools. We've got a number of, we've got performance management program. We've got development plans. We've got 360 feedback that we do. And really what we do is we look at evaluating people's future potential. And one thing I'd like to highlight is with succession planning is it's really looking at the difference between a high performer versus a high potential. So someone could be a really high performer in their current role, be doing a great job. However, they may not have the skills or the emotional intelligence or whatever is needed to move them up into the leadership ranks. So it's really about differentiating between that. And I think that's a really critical one. The other thing we do when we look at succession planning is look at what are the critical roles within our organization, ones that are really difficult to fill, that if we had to go out to the marketplace, there's not a lot of that out there. So it's how do we actually grow those people? How do we keep them engaged and how do we develop them? So we do the assessment tools, and then we have calibration meetings. And calibration meetings really puts a lot of rigor behind it. We hold our leader, the people doing the assessment, accountable. We want to make sure that everybody is using the same criteria to, some managers are actually easier on their staff than others. So it's really asking the right questions, again, to make sure that the right people have been identified as high potentials and that those people are the ones that we're going to be focusing. That doesn't mean we don't focus on all of our staff. We actually develop all of our staff, but we put extra priority in the people that we've identified as high potentials. The other thing that's really important is just because someone is identified as a high potential one year doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be. It's really about it being sustained, that their performance is sustained, that they're showing what they can do. And it's also about constantly raising the bar and ensuring that we have the right people in the right roles. And then we move on to development plans. So the development plan is really to say, again, every single person has strengths and weaknesses. And so it's really about what are the gaps that each one of us has? How do we close those gaps? Some of it is through training. However, what we're looking at, because the return on investment on training is less than if we were to give people stretch goals, allow them to work on projects, allow them to interim assignments at higher levels, and let them go in and actually do the job. And that's actually been found to be much more successful in growing and developing your people. At some point in the future, we haven't got there yet. It's really about looking at a mentoring program and have people who can mentor these people who we see as our high potentials. Next slide, please. So in Richmond Hill, this is a fairly new program. We started last year last February, we started the program, and we started at the senior levels, and we're going to cascade down into the organization to the manager level. So we've looked at all the director, commissioner, and city manager positions. We've identified critical positions, and we've created development plans. And as part of this process, we've said who is ready now, who will be ready in 1 to 3 years from now, and who'd be ready beyond 3 years. So we've looked at all of those, and we've got people in our funnel who can replace these critical roles. We will be moving into phase 2 down to the manager level in February of next year, and we'll be going through the same process. And then we'll be revisiting again the people already identified in the director, commissioner, city manager position and say, who else do we have in the pipeline, and who else do we need to focus our development on? And that in a nutshell is our succession planning program, and I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Is that questions? Okay, I have Councilor Munch, I have Councilor Sotos.
A good day, thank you, through the mayor. Excellent presentation, lovely topic, really well done. Needs to be said, okay? One of the things that I like to focus on is something culture. And in a growing time, we have a culture that often needs to be adjusted. And as you go into a medium-sized firm, I consider our organization a medium-sized firm, and we're going through an adjustment period from those that have been around for 10 or 15 years, for example. We're in a different, one of the terms used this week is life cycle. Our life cycle of our organization is changing and about to change and needs to change, in part because the demographics and our landmass and our roles are changing in COVID as well. So coming back to culture, how do we have a team in place, or is there a concept HR whereby we are prioritizing a culture adjustment? When we're engaging people through the various ranks, they're brought into a certain mindset, a certain way of things that are doing, a certain process, and there's actually not a lot of innovation because of that, which is not negative, just the reality is that you want people to follow a process so we have a good culture and a structure in place. But we lose the innovation side, and that is why when you bring a variety of others from outside, it helps balance some of the vibrancy that comes in. So how do we do that? Are we going in seminars, which is unlikely today? Are we putting people in programming, in specialty training programs? Are we working with AMO? Are we looking for people inside the organization that are, I'm not gonna call them trendsetters, but agitators, okay, that are saying about that culture? What do we do there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. And I'm a huge believer in culture drives results. Culture change takes between 5 to 7 years to actually happen because, and again, culture drives everything an organization does. I would say that we as an organization are in the early stages of this. We've got a new leadership team in place. Granted, most of us are interim at this point. And culture is driven from the top down because organizations are a shadow of their leaders. So it's really, and we're looking at a reorg, we're looking at a strat plan, all of those things will be able to drive the culture. Couldn't agree with you more. We're absolutely looking to raise the bar, have a talent advantage, and have innovation and creativity, have more risk taking, because that's exactly how you do it. So we're, again, early stages. That's the goal that we on the leadership team are looking to work toward.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, addressed. Really well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Acting Commissioner Adams. That was a fabulous presentation and fully supported. I'm a huge supporter of the concept. And to me, there can be no better person to come into a role than someone who's already been with an organization or a corporation such as us for quite some time. And they have institutional knowledge of exactly how we operate and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. I agree with Councillor Mudge that the culture perhaps needs to tweak. And yes, I agree with you that that does take time. And I'd like to also see a focus on diversity. I think that in today's age and everything that we know that is going on, I do believe that diversity becomes critical and will become critical to our organization. So I hope that that is top in your cap as well. I'm pretty sure it is. And thank you. You've been doing an excellent job. And I want to commend you and our staff for keeping everything together as we've moved through some very challenging times with regards to staffing. We have seen a lot of staff leave, whether it's retired or resigned or fired. A lot of our staff have gone. And there are a lot of pockets, especially at the senior levels in the NELT, that should be filled as quickly and efficiently as possible, because we need the leaders. Like you said, it's all top down. And I completely agree with you. So hopefully anyone who currently sits, and that includes yourself, anyone who currently sits in interim positions will soon see changes in that, and they'll become permanent. However, the process must be enacted. But right now, I believe we're in a good position, and we can only make that position stronger by ensuring that the individuals who take these primary positions are those who truly know our organization and our corporation and respect who we are and what we do. So I'll gladly move to receive your presentation as well with thanks. And I have no questions other than to say thank you, and I look forward to everything that's coming forward.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? There being none, we do have a motion, Councillor Phillips, for receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just to interrupt, the first presentation that I moved we didn't vote on that.
We did. There was no seconder either, Mr. Mayor. So that's why I assumed that it's a procedural motion to receive. That's why I didn't raise it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll pay attention.
Sorry about that.
I'm happy to second it, Mr. Mayor, if that's helpful.
Okay, we're good. All right, our third presentation is Ms. Meeta Gandhi, Director of Strategic Innovation and Engagement, regarding our support for outdoor patios. And I understand you're inviting us to one for lunch. Oh, maybe not. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for having me here today. I am presenting an approach that we have put in place for the temporary use of outdoor use and for sales. This was a rapid fire activity last week. It involved very much collaboration throughout the organization, a coordinated effort with planning, building, bylaw, economic development, and a briefing note was sent to council last week on this topic. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide an overview and to respond to questions. We have representatives from the areas I've mentioned on hand to respond to specific technical questions if you have any. But I'll proceed with the presentation. Ryan, you can go to the next slide, please. So as background, and this is echoing what Commissioner Jocelyn said in the first presentation, on June 15th, the province announced stage 2 businesses and workplaces were permitted to open, and that meant that took effect on June 19th, so last Friday. Next slide. So as part of stage 2, it includes dining and outdoor areas for restaurants, bars, food trucks, and other food and drink establishments. This presentation focuses primarily on that, but we're also allowing for outdoor sales. It applies to extending or creating new patios. So existing patios, establishments that have a patio, that are not looking to either extend or create a new one, those could open without any process. And this goes from June 19th, last Friday, to December 31st of this year. Next slide, please. So this approach aligns with the Recover Richmond Hill Task Force. We brought the recommendation to create a task force to council earlier in the spring. That task force has been meeting, and there's a presentation that will be coming to council in July on the action plan. Given that the province has moved into stage 2, we moved rapidly to make sure that the patios were enabled to open. This was one of the recommendations that was to come out of the Richmond Hill Task Force action plan. We're advancing it now to make sure we continue to support businesses. And we want to continue to support the establishment of the new patios or the expansion and the establishment of outdoor sales. So establishments that need outdoor space to allow for increased physical distancing within their establishments, so storefronts. This would support that as well. And we are waiving all applicable fees. Normally, there would be fees associated with establishing permits to set up a new patio, and this is been waived. Next slide, please. So there are 2 stages. We have put in place interim measures, which I will describe in a moment, and ultimately we will be moving to put in place a temporary use bylaw. Next slide, please. For the interim solution, we have already put into place, and we've received a number of inquiries. My understanding is approximately 15 inquiries. We've already issued 2 letters. We do have within Richmond Hill 61 licensed patios. And so just those are some numbers to keep in mind. We will allow for the patios to be established, provided that they meet a certain number of guidelines, and I'll be describing that in the next slide. The guidelines are in place until we actually put in place the temporary use bylaw. There is a council public meeting taking place on July 15th and a council meeting taking place immediately following that so that we can put in place the temporary use bylaw. The next slide, please. So in the meantime, our building services team will be working with individuals. We are looking for individuals, and this is also in keeping with the provincial guidelines or requirements. We are looking for the landlord's permission. They need to make sure they meet the provincial and York Region Health requirements, and that has to do with physical distancing and other measures to make sure that there is good hygiene in place. We are going to limit the expansion into parking areas. I would add that all of these apply to private land. So if there are inquiries about public areas or spaces, or the expansion into public areas. This does not apply. It applies only to private areas. We are ensuring that there's a maximum patio size, that there continues to be accessible parking spaces. So if in fact a patio needs to move into a parking lot area, that there continues to be accessible parking spaces. We want to make sure that there is protection and proper circulation for pedestrians and for vehicles. And we want to make sure that we do not obstruct any fire routes. There are minimum setback requirements. And of course, we want to make sure that any new or expanded patio complies with the Ontario Fire and Building Codes. Next slide. In terms of process, requests are asked to be sent to our planning at Richmond Hill email address, and individuals who submit requests for extended or new patios would be asked to provide the address, their email address, the gross floor area of the premise, and the proposed gross floor area of the patio, a letter of permission from the landlord or condominium corporation, and a sketch depicting compliance. So that is the type of information we're asking. We review that information, and then a letter is sent back to the individual. As I mentioned, we're already issuing letters, so it's not taking very long to turn those requests around and get the letters back to the companies, individuals that are requesting for extended or new patios. Next slide. So the temporary use bylaw is working its way through our standard process. This will extend what I've just mentioned, and the guidelines would be essentially put in place by way of the temporary use bylaw, and that would extend to December 31st. We need to abide by Section 34 of the Planning Act, so that is why we are putting public notice. And we are establishing a council public meeting followed by the council meeting. And in the meantime, the guidelines will be in place. So essentially, the temporary use bylaw puts into effect the guidelines that we are utilizing right now. Next slide, please. Bylaw, we want to work collaboratively and collectively with operators and businesses. And so our Community Standards Division will work with businesses on a complaint basis. If we do receive complaints, we will work and contact the individual operator and ensure that they understand what the guidelines are so that they are better positioned to comply with them. Next slide, please. So timelines, our guidelines are in place now. They were in place by the time the stage 2 was allowed for outdoor patios. The council public meeting is taking place on July 15th. The public notice is being placed this week. And there is a 20-day appeal period, which will then come, the bylaw will then come into full effect. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Are there any questions?
Yes, Councillor Chan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Director Gandy, because as I know that certainly the economic development team, which also helping myself, Councillor Munch, Councillor West, and other members of the Recover Richmond Hill Task Force, we've been working really actively and hard with the support staff every 2 weeks, another meeting tomorrow. And these are the kind of things that we need truly to show that they are actually tangible, workable measures that would help our business to recover, of course, along with our local business partners. So if I understand it correctly through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Gandy, so July 15th is the time, hopefully, that the council will pass in this special council meeting of this interim bylaw, but it won't really get into effect until early August. So that's the way I understand it. So in the interim, is there anything that between now and early August? Is there anything else through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Gandy, business can get ready and do?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, the interim guidelines are in place now. So they do not need to wait until July or August for to take any action. If they contact the planning department, they provide the information that I listed in the presentation, and they would like to extend or create a new patio, then they would do so by that process. We turn a letter around so that we review the material that they're providing, and we provide them a letter. If it's an existing patio and they're not looking to extend or create a new patio, those establishments can operate and open up as usual.
Thank you. That's very helpful, because one of the slides talking about it would take effect 20 days after appeal period is over. So it's good to know that transitionally that things are already making things happen. That's great. The second question, perhaps a clarification through Mr. Mayor to Director Gandy, is that what would be the thinking or thoughts in terms of communication? What form and shape and of communication the Director Gandy can shed some light to us? I'm sure each one of us as council members will help promote the message.
So a news release, I understand, is being prepared today that encompasses both this information and the information that Commissioner Jocelyn presented. And so that will include the patio information. We have already updated the website. We sent an e-blast to all the businesses on our distribution list. We informed council by way of a briefing note last week that this was the action that we were going to take moving forward. We'll continue to use other tools like social media and our website and our mailing distribution list to get the message out to the business community.
Thank you. And I think certainly we have lots of business partners in this, like the Richmond Hill Board of Trade, which is the Shop Local Initiative, and also Chinese Business Association is also a member of the task force, and all these other members organizations, that business organization I'm talking about, can certainly help to get our messages out. So thank you to the team of economic development under the leadership of Dr. Gandy. It's something we ought to and we should really working together to try to help our business recovery in any way that it could. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, you need a motion to receive the presentation of thanks. If you do, I'm happy to move it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor West, is there a seconder?
Thank you. I would second that. I do have a couple of comments. I'm sorry, Director Gandy, can you just clarify for me? I think I heard you say that if there's a business that has an existing patio now, they can go ahead as usual under the interim type of measures that are in place at the moment. But the expansion of a patio or the creation of a patio where one does not exist cannot happen until after this bylaw is officially passed. Is that right? And the 20-day period is passed?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, they can expand their patio or create a new patio. They need to provide the information that I listed in the presentation through to the planning department, and then we would be issuing a letter allowing them to create that. That is the interim measure, so that they do not need to wait until the middle of July or until the appeal period is over. They can proceed with using that documentation through to the planning department to expand or to create a new patio.
Okay, so having said that, if somebody put in an application right away and the conditions were easy to meet without having to make any big changes, somebody then could have a patio open and ready to go, or expanded and ready to go within how long? A couple of weeks?
No, within 2 days if they have. I mean, we've within a few days. So we've had, I know from, just got confirmation today from David Finbo that we've issued 2 letters. So
Great.
we just started this on Friday.
Okay.
It's not going to be weeks.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm really pleased to hear this. So that wasn't my expectation. So that's kind of like a little bit of an early birthday present or something like that. So thank you very much. Again, like I said the last time, I'm assuming that we will be communicating this as far and wide as we can, because I'm hoping that all businesses will know that it's a possibility if they can meet, you know, the space requirements and so on, and it is relevant to their business, obviously. I know that the Richmond Hill Board of Trade has been a great partner in helping to get the word out, and I can't imagine that we wouldn't be communicating to them, and I'm sure we already are. So I would encourage that to happen. One of the things I guess I just wanted to maybe reinforce is that I think that I totally believe this is a good idea. I think it will be very helpful to some of the businesses like restaurants that really need it. I'm thrilled that we're able to do this, and I hope it will help them as much as I hope it will. But one of the things that I hope that we'll also do as a corporation is treat this as a bit of a pilot project for after all of this stuff is over, because I really think that there is a possibility for us to be a little bit more creative than we have maybe been in the past in allowing little patios where appropriate, you know, during the summer months, where we haven't allowed them necessarily in the past. And I really do think that there are other businesses that might be able to benefit from this over the longer, like non-COVID time. And so I hope that we will be keeping track of some of the challenges maybe that this passing this bylaw will create, because I'm sure that there will be some, but also we will be keeping track of some of the opportunities that this new temporary bylaw might be able to offer businesses over the longer term that really are of no consequence, or maybe even a positive consequence for us as a municipality. It's interesting actually that you said that there's 60 something patios in Richmond Hill. I'm sure that's correct. But the thing is, it's interesting because there are very few patios in a bunch of different areas in Richmond Hill as well. And I think that that is actually something that would be beneficial to certain areas to have that kind of the vibrancy that people can get in our all too short summers, to be able to have some dining opportunities outside. I personally really enjoy that, to be able to, you know, have a beer and wings or whatever on a patio. And there aren't that many places in certain parts of town that would offer that. So I would hope we would also look at this as an opportunity for the longer term. But I'm really thrilled, and thank you to the economic development folks that have helped to spearhead this task force, and to Councillor Chan and Councillor Munch also that have served on that task force, because I think that it's something that we can do that's helpful to our businesses during this time. So thank you very much, Director Gandy.
Thank you. Okay, we shall, I'm sorry, I'm not on here. Oh, I am on. Okay, sorry. All right, then we do have a motion.
If I may as well, please, if you had a chance, if anybody else speaking. And I think Councillor Silvers would like to speak as well.
Okay, I want to say it's been, carry on. I need to see hands. I can't wait.
My fault.
See no hands.
I apologize.
No hands, I move on. So
My
Councillor
fault.
Silovitz, Councillor Munch. Councillor Silovitz.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Munch, if he wants to finish something he was saying, I don't have a problem with that. No? Okay, I'm on. Thank you very much, Director Gandy, and thanks, Mr. Mayor. I celebrate this. This is amazing, because this does allow our small businesses, our restaurants, to get out there and start hopefully bringing in some more money. I just have a couple of questions to you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Gandy, that I would like to ask you. With regards to advocacy, is there any way that we as that city can assist any of the businesses in advocating their need or their want to have a patio when they don't have one? to get the landlord to approve. So, because I think there might sometimes be some reticence there. And is there any way that if any small business owner is having a problem with that, can they come to us the same as they go to SBEC for assistance? Can they come to us, to you, to ask for assistance with your speaking with the landlord so that the landlord is completely aware of what is necessary?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are happy to provide further clarification on the guidelines to both the landlords and as well as the operators. So if that is one area that we can provide assistance, then we are happy to do so. It may be that the landlords are not 100% clear as to the guidelines specifically, and we do as part of our regular business through our economic development team. We do speak to both operators and landlords on any number of matters. So this could be very much one of them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And with regards to the BRT, Viva Young, YRT BRT, and Shop Young, have you contacted them directly? Are you working in tandem with them at all so that that's another platform like the Board of Trade for us to use to get to businesses?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there will be a presentation coming forth at the July 8th council meeting with all of the action items that the Recover Richmond Hill Task Force has identified. Shop Local is one of the items, and I have to say that it has been a privilege working with members of the Richmond Hill Board of Trade and the Business Improvement Area, as well as local members of Parliament and Provincial Parliament, in reaching consensus on some of the priority items. So the Shop Local piece is part of it. I can say that I don't have all of the details to present to you today because we want to provide that information on July 8th, but we do, part of the priority areas is to promote the Shop Local program for sure.
Thank you. Then my next question to you, Mr. Mayor, is you refer to outside sales. What exactly does that mean? I mean, does that mean that any store or retail store, commercial, can put a table outside their unit and sell things like a flea market type of thing, or a farmer's market? Like, what exactly do you mean by outside sales? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So through you, Councillor Silovitz, through you, Mr. Mayor. The outside sales is another area where our, through the Recover Richmond Hill Task Force, that was identified as an area that shop owners wanted to have a little bit more flexibility and freedom in terms of providing for physical distancing within their premises. So it is not a flea market. It is not intended to move the entire contents of the store outside. It is to provide for additional physical distancing within the store. So that might mean moving, some goods to the outside area, permitted that they're not, that they still meet the same space restrictions that the same space guidelines that we're putting in place for outdoor patios in general.
Thank you. That's very good to know. I guess bylaw will have their work cut out for them as well to make sure that everybody's complying and no one is doing it and they haven't got the proper permitting. And that leads me to my penultimate question. With regards to that, like we put, and this is just off the top of my head, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. We put up permits when there is something has to be renovated. For instance, my building is the garage right now. The membranes are being renovated. So permit notices are put up everywhere so people know that is permitted. In order for us to maintain legality, is it possible, and is this going to happen, that each patio and outside sale area that we are going to approve not patios that exist right now, they are permitted, but anything that pops up, so to speak. Are we going to perhaps have something that the vendor can put on the outside so that we know and bylaw knows and our residents know that this has been approved and is accepted by the city? I think it would help. It would help us, and it would help our residents as well, and will definitely help the business owners.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start this response, but I may look to our Chief Building Officer, David Finbo, for clarification. We are issuing letters that the operator can use, which indicates that they are permitted to extend their patio and to extend or create a new patio once they've provided the documentation that we're requesting. So David, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, if that's something that they would be posting.
No, through you, Mayor Barron, and just for clarification. So there are two streams here. One is for licensed patios where they're new or expanded. AGCO does require a letter of no objection from the municipality. So they're the two letters that Mita has referred to previously. Outside of that, we have provided guidelines that we're going to relay to property owners through our community standards group, Tracy's group in particular, where they'll provide the education that's necessary. To get this interim process up and running, we haven't looked at in great seriousness an approval process or a registration process. You can imagine we have 61 licensed patios in the municipality. We have more than 61 patios. These are just licensed patios. We've got to burden the process, which would stretch our approval process for the letters of no objection, that we need to focus on what is necessary. But this is certainly on our list of things to look at, is whether or not we're going to recommend a registration or licensing process for the simple little retail store that wants to put a sales rack out. Do we really want to have them go through a process where they need to communicate with us, provide us with a sketch, and us turn around and provide that letter of authorization, license, or permit? So we're aware of this and we are looking at it, but right now the letters of no objection are simply related to newer expanded patios related to AGCO licensing. Putting that aside, we are receiving numerous inquiries related to the interim guidelines and how they can apply to the pizza shop owner who wants to put a table outside and put a couple of chairs out. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you, CBO Finbo. I really appreciate that. It's like a little flashing light at the back of my head. It's just something we need to be aware of, because otherwise we can get a lot of these pop-ups everywhere, and they could impede a sidewalk or impede a driveway or a parking lot. So I just think it's something that we need to be very much aware of. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And my final thought is cover notes. And I would just suggest that perhaps we might want to approach cover notes, because they do inhabit one of our heritage buildings, that perhaps they could use the outdoor area of the theater, which is not being used, as their patio. And I think that might enable them also to bring in a little bit more finance. So it's just a thought, Director Gandy. Thank you very much.
Councillor Munch.
Good day. Thank you. I guess I want to start by saying, Councillor West, you're on fire today. I love lots of comments you're saying. And Councillor Solitz, I like your last point where I like to start is 60. It's good that we have 61 patios. I didn't know that, actually. Thanks for the info. One of the things we're saying is that when you're doing a business, generally speaking, there's two ways of doing a business: market approach or production approach. When we talk about the need of the market, and we say, hey, look, how can we build this and how can we improve the brand of Richmond Hill? I would like to have a discussion about what are we going to do at Richmond Green? What are we going to do at Mill Pond? What are we going to do at Richmond Hill Center for Performing Arts? There are great opportunities there to really brand ourselves and to allow the BIA and the downtown core, for example. We allow the other business communities, such as the Richmond Hill Chamber of Commerce, formerly Chamber of Commerce, now Board of Trade. I would like to see really go like crazy, and I'm really happy with Mr. Fimbo. Sadie, I love what's going on. Good job. A little plug there for you. I love the entrepreneurial spirit. This is fantastic. Well done. Thank you for the email last week. I love the presentation. I love the fast track. Councillor West said it as well. I was really happy when I heard the term when you're moving forwards, because what if someone wants to go forward for July 1? We have these real large gathering areas such as Richmond Green and Mill Pond, maybe to a smaller extent, Richmond Hill Center for Performing Arts, that can allow for social distancing, can allow for us to do it. I think the branding along Yonge Street would be really great. I think the BA could do something amazing there. Kudos to Councillor Chan and the committee who's doing the work down there. So those are a couple of just additional thoughts on how can we be entrepreneurial, get ahead of the curve, reflect social distancing, really be vibrant, get ahead of the curve, make it fast track. Another thought, so think about maybe expanding our organization, letting others run it, but within our guidelines, and we're reaching out. Another thought that I'm going to say is giving that sticker or some sort of approval. I love the entrepreneurial spirit. We talked about how you got to be, innovative versus a process. Really good job. One of the things that was brought up in the past years was having a concierge service to planning and to others. This is a fantastic opportunity to do a concierge service. And whoever you guys decide to do your the type of establishment, retail, example of they've been hammered. The retail establishments have been absolutely hammered in this process. And we really need to try to help them. Last night, massive media, how at 12:01 Hemingway's was opening up, and people, 11 o'clock last night, 11:30, they were counting down. It was unbelievable how much was happening in downtown Toronto. We have that opportunity here to do that kind of thing. So I'm going to say to you, people are cooped up. They really want to get out there. We really want to see people spend. We want people to be safe. We've got great opportunity here at Richmond Hill. We're partnering. You guys are on the economic development, have done an absolutely stellar job in the last 2 months. Mita, you got to take some credit for that, because I assume it's under your leadership. So those are some thoughts. So way to go, Councillor West. Way to go, the thought of Councillor Silowitz. Keep going to the innovative front and keep plugging. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'm a mover and a seconder, Councillor Chan, Councillor Munch, for receipt of the presentation. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, delegations. We're moving on. Mr. Gabriel Di Martino, Armland Group. Sir, item 12.2. There you are, sir. You need to undo your,
Hello.
there you go.
Good morning, Mayor Barrow, members of council. I trust everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I'm Gabriel Di Martino, Vice President of Armland Group, and we are the applicant for item 12.2, the request for additional service and allocation for our subdivision in the under Parkgate Holdings Inc. in the North Leslie community. I've reviewed the staff report, and we're in full agreement with the report and the staff recommendation, and we respectfully request that the council approve the recommendation as put forward. I just wanted to appear before you in the event that as the applicant, any questions were arisen, and in dealing with Stephanie Dumont of the clerk's office, she advised that this would be the only way that I could be recognized. The benefits of the assignment of the additional service and allocation would permit the registration and full build out of the subdivision all in one phase. Just I want to highlight some of the points in the staff report and in the letter that I wrote in support of it. It would eliminate the temporary infrastructure and any throwaway costs. It minimizes any construction related impacts and logistical issues with the future homeowners. It had to do a phased approach. It results in efficiency of the delivery of municipal services like waste management pickup and the snow removal. Provides for the timely delivery of servicing outfalls to the two subdivisions to the north of us in the North Leslie community. It would accelerate the build out of our subdivision and also assist in the build out of the North Leslie community. It increases the number of housing units, obviously, that can be made available to the market to deal with the supply issue that, as you know, has been a big driver in increased house prices. And it would align itself with the growth plan and the Bill 108 provincial policies that have been out for a bit now. And it aligns itself with both the region and the city's fiscal strategies. It accelerates the payment of development charges to both the region so they can service their debt and to the city's fiscal strategy. And the job creation, albeit temporary, and the DC payments also assist in the economic recovery efforts that we want to partner with all the municipalities to get us out of the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So those are my submissions. Subject to any questions, I'd be happy to provide any answers. And I thank you for your time.
No. Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the delegation. I do not have any issues with the staff report, and I thank you for a very comprehensive staff report. This is part of the North Leslie secondary plan, and I just can't wait to see it come to a full completion. And I'm very happy to see that we are locating servicing a location. So, Part D of the motion is to have a delegated authority to a commission of planning. And I know we're in good hands, so I don't have any issues. I would like to move the staff recommendation. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Silovitz, any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Barrow. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Our next delegate is Dominic Matusik from WND Associates Limited at 110 Major Mac Drive East. Mr. Matusik.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
We can, sir.
Great. My name is Dominic Matusik. I'm speaking to item 12.3, a zoning bylaw amendment application for 110 Major Mackenzie Drive. My name is Dominic Matusik. I'm a planner with Walker Knott Dragicevic Associates Limited, known as WND. We're the planning consultants representing the proponent. Our firm has been involved with this project since 2016, and I have been personally involved since late 2018. I'm going to keep it brief. As outlined in more detail in the staff report, the project involves the redevelopment of the existing detached dwelling with a 2-story medical office building with an unfinished basement and an associated 12-stall parking area in the rear. The current proposal represents the culmination of years of discussion with city staff to achieve a built form that meets the goals of the local mixed-use corridor OP designation, and that improves the public realm and the pedestrian experience along Major Mackenzie Drive, and does not create any negative undue impact on the adjacent properties to the east, west, or to the north. Based on discussions with staff, the proposed parking ratio has increased since the original proposal, as has the side yard setback, both of which were issues that were previously identified as areas of concern. In our opinion, the proposal is consistent with the PPS 2020, conforms to the growth plan, and conforms to both the York Region official plan as well as the City of Richmond Hill official plan, and in particular, the local mixed-use corridor designation, which is intended to accommodate small and medium scale residential mixed use and commercial developments such as this one. The proposed development is also well below the maximum permitted heights and densities for the local mixed-use corridor designation, and now meets the parking requirements of the zoning bylaw as well. Lastly, there's also a concurrent site plan application, which is currently being processed by staff. So we anticipate that all of the outstanding technical comments will be addressed in the coming weeks. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if any members of council have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them as best as I can. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Munch.
Hey, good day. Thank you. This is a really amazing project. For those who don't know, I've been relatively close to this. I can tell you the business in North York. I've visited, been part of it. I think the pain clinic and bringing in the pain with some physiotherapy. We really want this type of medical approach in Richmond Hill and along Major Mackenzie. Requires a very hands-on approach. I like the whole idea of what you're doing with the parking situation, the garbage. I know that was an issue of late, and that you guys handled all of that because you're very little medical waste and where that's going. And I prod staff, really, you don't hear this from me very often, but I really prod the staff on the planning side that, to use that word today, after we just went through a business discussion and this one here, this business really has got to get going, and we really need it. It's a great location. I think the report speaks for itself. So I wish you well, and I hope the business continues to be a success from North York. I welcome more physiotherapy and those types of medical type support structures to come to Richmond Hill along the Major Mac corridor, where we're support Mackenzie Health and our efforts there. So love the report. Love what you guys are doing. Good job, Dominic. You and I spoke a couple times, so well done. Thank you. And I will move the recommendations.
Okay, is there a seconder for Councillor Barros? Any comments beyond that? If not, moving seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously for those that I can see. Thank you, sir. Okay, our next item is 1210, being the noise bylaw, proposed bylaw, et cetera, Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this one, I first of all like to say thank you for the cooperation of all parties, including certainly the hard work of our staff. I think it really concluded well on page 4 of the staff report. This is back in, hard to believe, 5 years ago, 2015, when then council adopted my member's motion to direct staff to look at and this noise bylaw, and also particularly looking at how we can improve in the enforcement and how effective the enforcement was then, and also improve the process in terms of getting approval for noise exemption. So although it takes time, but I'm glad that something started 5 years ago now is coming to not just the end of the tunnel, but really with positive, particularly improve enforcement actions outlined on page 3 of the report, which is great, with a particular dedicated phone line in terms of the after hours, because most of the complaints on noises are either after hours on the weekdays and the weekends. So I'm glad for that. And then also now we're introducing, like for example, the City of Toronto has, is that specific decimal. We said what it meant with an objective measure rather than what is acceptable and not acceptable as noise. So I want to congratulate staff for bringing this forward. And I'd like to actually move the recommendation on the page 1 of the report, A to C, but also I like to add a D as well. And the reason is that maybe Mr. Kirk could put that up. The reason I put up the D is that, yes, but let me expand on when you see it. One of the things is that I know that for the province, under the current situation, because of trying to help to expedite or help with the recovery, particularly with the construction, the province has mandated for the time being during the period under Ontario regulation to begin the construction allowed to be started at 6 a.m. The city used to have a 7 a.m. So just actually this past week, I have got complaint from people saying, oh, how come construction has started so early, even though that we don't have, changed our bylaw yet. So I'm adding the D part specifically, agreeing everything on the staff report and recommendation, but making sure when the province is suspending or lifting the emergency orders under the regulation that allowing construction time to start at 6 a.m. to be reverted back to 7 a.m. So the D is for having the direction to staff to bring back a report to revise the noise bylaw to council soon after the province lifted the allowance of starting construction time at 6 a.m. So on this particular issue, I think that I trust that probably virtually all members may in the past receiving concerns, complaints from people that regarding to noise. So this is setting up a more objective way to enforce our bylaw. Now, Mr. Mayor, I would like to, through you, perhaps direct a question to staff. Particularly, I may have missed it, but in the report, it hasn't mentioned anything about the need for education, meaning that that we need to really promote or raise awareness among our residents and business of this new or improved noise bylaw. So I just want to know through you, Mr. Mayor, to the staff, what are the thoughts in terms of consideration of promoting or educational aspects for people to become aware of this new improved noise bylaw?
Okay, first of all, we're going to get a seconder on this matter here. Councillor West is seconded. Thank you, and I'll call on you.
Yes.
Staff is looking for an answer. Not sure.
And I have a question.
I know. You have it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's coming to me. Yes, every time we implement or council approves a new bylaw, we would initiate a communications program as well as an enforcement implementation program to get the word out about what the new rules are that apply. And certainly we anticipate doing that for the noise bylaw with the assistance of our communication services section. We'll be doing things like updating the website and trying to get the word out as much as possible.
Thank you. So that's good. And I certainly look forward to after staff have taken into consideration of this and working so hard over these years to get to where we are. And I hope that the city of Richmond Hill, we are launching as I mentioned, an improved, more effective enforcement measures, as well as promoting people aware of we have objective standards now to deal with noise concerns and complaints. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to all these comments.
Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a lot to add. I thank staff for doing the work. I think this bylaw will help us to be more updated in how we enforce noise, which is a problem that we've had in the last little while. I agree with everything in the staff report except for the approach of the 6 o'clock start time for construction noise. I am aware that that is a provincial order at this moment, but I do thank Councillor Chan for bringing it forward to ensure that once that is lifted, that we can go back to a normal start time for construction noise. I have received a number of complaints about that, and I think it's pretty unreasonable for somebody over the longer term to have to endure construction noise starting at 6 a.m. So while I guess it's the way it is for now, due to the provincial mandate, I would like to see that changed as quickly as possible so that we can go back to a later start time. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm happy to support the motion in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments this time? Seeing none, all listen.
Councillor Barros, I think Councillor Chan.
Yeah, Councillor Chan, Councillor. Sorry?
I think
Councillor Barros here. I've got a question to the mover.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, I've got this thing in front of me. Go ahead, Councillor Barros.
Thank you very much. So in the revised motion, there is a restriction on Sunday and statutory holidays. Why did you pick Sunday and not Saturday?
Okay, who's the question now?
It's Councillor Chan.
To the mover, I said.
Councillor Chan?
Is that a question for?
Yes, it was a
the
question
idea
for you,
for the
sir.
mover or for staff?
For you, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong. The way I understand it, it's this is the practice of the current bylaw, but I stand to be corrected. Perhaps Director Steele can confirm this.
Go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the current bylaw does not allow construction noise on Saturday or Sunday.
Oh, I'm happy if that's the case. I'll be happy to revise it to include if its current situation, no construction on Saturday as well. I'll be happy to change it to no construction noise allowed on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and statutory holidays. Thank you, Councilor Barrows.
So then, Mr. Mayor, through you to Director Steele, are there any other issues in D that are unforeseen at this point in time? I'm guessing the councillor means to support and enhance the current situation, but is there anything in there that maybe is missing, or there's a consequence that we may have if we vote on D that is, a problem?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we did anticipate, staff did anticipate coming back forward like this when the provincial order around construction noise is lifted. Currently it's in place until October of 2021. So we had anticipated coming back and amending the bylaw for construction noise to something that was Richmond Hill specific. The numbers that are included, the times that are included in this recommendation is consistent with our current thought on what we would maybe do. But we do anticipate every time you implement a new bylaw, you learn some things in trying to implement. And over the next year, as we're learning things, we might learn some things about this that might want us to adjust it, but the times that are reflected there would be consistent with our current thought.
Okay. And then the other part is, so we put Saturday back into the motion. Currently, statutory holidays is in our current bylaw, or is it not? Through you to the director.
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, you're gonna have to repeat that because it cut out a bit.
I apologize. So statutory holidays in our current bylaw, is that also a restriction?
Yes, currently there is no construction noise allowed on statutory holidays.
Okay, and just a clarification, Mr. Mayor, when we say construction noise, is this any type of construction noise, or is this only of a commercial nature? So on a statutory holiday, if a neighbor wants to work on their deck because they've now got free time, are they allowed to work on their own property? Is it just restricting commercial operators? Through you to the director.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Excellent question. We did define the two differently in the bylaw. So we have domestic construction and construction noise. So this would just restrict large scale construction that's being undertaken by contractors. You would still be allowed to do work on your own private property.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, are we good to go on this motion as is? If so, all those in favor? Sorry.
I just want to confirm, Mr. Mayor, if I might, is the mover and the seconder revising the motion as previously was discussed with Councillor Barrows there, just so I can understand and make sure when I update this Saturday, Sunday?
Mr. Mayor, that's what I understood. The intent of this motion, I believe, at least the one that I would be comfortable with, is to put the current time restrictions back in place once the provincial order has been lifted. I think Councillor Barrows makes a good point. I'll leave that to the mover of the motion to confirm his thoughts on this, though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and my colleagues. And the intent is that, as Director Steele was saying, upon the changes on the provincial mandate, so to speak, about those times, then the staff would have opportunity to bring back, not only maybe in terms of updating on this aspect, but also on any other aspects after this new improved bylaw have been in place for over a year. So I'm fine to revert it back to what the current the practice has been. And again, I want to say thank you, Councilor Barrows, for raising that question. So I feel comfortable staying where it is as revised now on the screen.
All right. All right, Mr. Clerk. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next is we're down to the emergency time sensitive matters. We have two. Councilor Barrows, do you want to start the discussion on yours?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the clerk can put the motion on the screen, I believe I also sent it to all members of council, so you've already had a chance to see it.
Yes.
I see this as nothing more than housekeeping. It's an opportunity to make sure that when the motion is now, the minutes are in front of us, we actually get more teeth into it so that when our staff or our staff's consultants are at LPAT, they truly have the reflection of what council did that night. So the motion is self-explanatory, but I see it as nothing more than housekeeping to make sure the intent of council is properly recorded in the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, there's a mover and seconder. Is there any comments, questions? I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Riley. Sorry, go ahead. Is the seconder wish to speak? Do you wish to speak?
Oh, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sorry, I thought so.
I'd like to speak, please.
Go ahead, Councilor Munch.
So I this is laughable for me. This should be a
serious. Okay, we've been here long enough.
Yeah, but no. But this is serious. I mean, at public council, this exact thing was brought up, and there were members of council who dismissed it. And this is an example where I said I was involved in that. You guys should be aware of it. We should bring legal to it. We had a planning discussion about this. That the planner says, "Oh, it's okay." So now today you say there's a housekeeping matter. This is not a housekeeping matter. We need the information at council. We need to take our job seriously and take our roles. So this should take, some members of council should really take notice on this.
Point of order.
Because,
yes.
Right?
Point of order.
If the member is going to mock members of council and treat this as a personal grandstanding situation, Mr. Mayor, I'd ask you to have him just speak directly to the actual motion that's in front of us. I take offense to the tone that the councilor is taking.
Okay, Councilor Munch, just carry with direct on the AB.
Okay, I apologize for the tone. So I was trying to be polite when I was saying that we as a council as a whole, and that we should take it as a council.
Okay.
So, and if there's a point there, then I'll go further, and I'll go even further if we want to go there.
No, we don't want to go anywhere.
Okay, well then I'm gonna make it clear.
Our opinion on AB and
And not a, so hold on. You just said this is my opinion?
No.
We received an email from the Commissioner of Planning. I hope members of council read it. I know at least 2 people moved a motion upon that. Why are we moving this motion? During that council public meeting, this exact thing was discussed and was dismissed. This isn't a mocking.
Okay, please.
This is not a mocking.
This is
we need to take our job very, very seriously. We now have legal proceedings. People move forwards. We were notified. So I'll just say to you, great. Thank God that we had the Commissioner of Planning move forwards with us, because during that meeting, we also had member staff saying, yeah, this is okay.
We all moved it.
We all moved it, exactly, which is why when we say, I'm just waiting for more feedback. I'm ready, willing, and able for it. So I'm not going to go further.
Okay.
But I say to you that this make notice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Oh. All right, our other one is Councillor Liu. Mr. Clerk, we'll put that on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to first thank council for allowing the discussion on this one. I know this is sensitive, but I'm really passionate on this one. And I have a lot of information, but I'm going to make it very brief because it's pretty self-explanatory. And all I'm asking here is the City of Richmond Hill staff to consult with the York region and also to research our ability to mandate face coverings at all municipal buildings and inside commercial establishments. While we are talking about reviving business, reopening, going to phase 2, my personal experience is I went to Hillcrest Mall for the past 3 days to observe. And what I've been seeing is lots of teenagers. They are like, in a group of 10, 12, 15. They're very close together, no mask, no social distancing. And I'm really, really worried about that. Even though, Richmond has been doing quite well during this pandemic. But when we look at the US, it's been proven that, in other places in the world that, mandatory face mask has a lot of benefits. So I'd rather be proactive than passive. I don't know when the second wave comes and, eventually this has to be happen. I just want Richmond Hill to be prepared. So I'm not going to say anything more because, oh, by the way, I've done enough research that we have absolute power to set such a bylaw, but that's not what I'm asking today. I'm just asking staff to go explore the possibility of having mandatory face masks in Richmond Hill. So yeah, that's about it. I just want to keep it brief. It's been a long day. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak.
No problem. Councillor Pirelli, seconder. Sir?
No comments at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Chan.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Chan.
First of all, yes, I totally agree with the mover, Councillor Liu, in terms of this is something that we together as the public officials in municipality here would need to really work together with the public health. In particular, in Richmond Hill, we are under York region, whereas we have a medical officer health and public health that has an absolute mandate and the authority to do such a thing as what the Premier and also AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, is saying, that the public health certainly, particularly the medical officer health, has such authority to order that. Now, Mr. Mayor, you would remember, and you can attest to it, about a month ago, I actually wrote to you to raise the question at Regional Council at York to have this considered mandatory wearing of face masks, not just in Richmond Hill, because we are one of the 9 municipal York region, but also York region is the one with the medical officer health and the mandate of public health. And you will recall the response back from York Region Public Health at the time is recommended. So I think times have changed. It's over a month now, and things are particularly with the stage 2 and whenever stage 3 is reopening. So we need to prepare for the health and welfare of everyone. And I'd like to actually say that someone who's actually mayor of an Ontario municipality, whom I'm not going to mention here, but he said it well, is that when I wear masks, I'm protecting you. And when you wear masks, you're protecting me. And when we together wear masks together, we are protecting our community. So I would wholeheartedly support the motion, particularly at this point in time. I would say that it's not just in Richmond Hill. This should be an issue that raised to the York Regional Council. So I'm glad to see that reach out to York region, and then to have it all around in 905 in York region. So as I said, this is something that we should be doing, and I fully support it. And I also want to share particular comments that just now I said, you know, you wear the mask, you protect others, and others wear it, protect you. And when we all wear together, then we protect the community. And I have also personally have witnessed the kind of situation that Councillor Neil has mentioned. So I support wholeheartedly, and I hope the York region would do it for all of the 9 municipalities in York region. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It is done. Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Councillor Liu, for bringing this forward. I fully support this. I'm a full 100% supporter of wearing masks. And as Councillor Chan said, it's you wear a mask to protect others, and others wear masks to protect you. It's the asymptomatic carriers of COVID-19 that are of the most concern. So if one is wearing a mask and others are wearing a mask, it absolutely protects society against any uptick in infections. It is also recommended by the WHO, by the CDC, and by Canada Health, and by local public health departments. So I look forward to staff bringing something back to us as soon as possible. And I have had numerous discussions about this with staff, and in fact had a similar discussion with our city manager just yesterday about this. So I look forward to hearing back from staff. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Please.
I'm sorry?
Yes, please.
I don't see any. Sorry, Councillor Munch?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, when it's time.
Your hand leaves your square when you put it. Okay, Councillor Munch, Councillor West.
Good day. Yeah, good safety protocol, good motion. I received the information from staff last night. I also agree that we should be working with the region and following and working collaboratively with the province and the region. I think this motion just shows, as it says in the bottom, that we're going to be forwarding it to York Region and Council, and that we are moving an impression. I think we need to be doing more of this. So I applaud the Castro-Lee Ward 3 councillor for doing this. And I do think we have to work collaboratively. So, yep, you bet. Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm muted.
You're unmuted now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor West, and then Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I like the intent of this motion. I think it's well thought out. I also like the approach that we could maybe do this unilaterally, but I think a collaborative approach with the region is better, and I think this motion allows for that. So thank you to the councillor that brought this forward, Councillor Liu. I think that it would be better for all of us, actually, if we were doing this on a regional basis. But because of the way that the motion is worded, it can get the ball rolling in a Richmond Hill point of view and wait for whatever the region ends up deciding to do. And we can get the ball rolling while the region kind of catches up to this. I think it is would be better with all the things that have been said so far. I mean, it's really the widespread use of masks that is the most effective way to go. And that's certainly something we've learned during this pandemic. I think that, we need to continue to follow the advice of public health. I mean, none of us on council, I think, are public health experts, but we need to follow the advice of those that are. And I think, really what we're all trying to say, I think, is that, we don't want that second wave. I mean, if we can do what we can do to avoid it, it would be best for all of us and all of the citizens that live here, because frankly, all of the planning and the work that we've done, even in this meeting today, to move forward without having to move backwards again, is really the goal here. So I'll be interested to hear what happens. I understand that the region is looking to consider this on June the 25th. So I'll be interested to hear what the result of that is, but I certainly support this motion regardless. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DePaulo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I stated my objection earlier to this. I really think we should be following the lead of the Chief Medical Officer of Health in York Region. There's no call for this, and Richmond Hill's numbers are really good right now. We've turned a corner. If factors change and there's a reason we have to go to such an extreme extent, then we can investigate it at the time. But this is, to me, the wrong message. To me, it's really overstepping. We collect taxes, property taxes, in order to provide local services. We, collect garbage, shovel snow, and oversee our future planning. For all of a sudden us to step in with such a draconian law, it's just, to me, way outside of our mandate. So I can't support what's on the floor.
Okay. Thank you. No other comments? Sorry, Councillor Perrella. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just having a little difficulty with my microphone today. I just wanted to speak to Deputy Mayor DePaula's comments. I agree with everything he said. This is not something that we want to do unilaterally without the guidance and the advice of our Chief Medical Officer of Health. And I hope that everyone can recognize that this motion that I've seconded is just that. It is to get information that staff are, and most likely have already been doing this work to make sure that we have a consolidated effort regionally, provincially, even in the country for that matter. And that, no, we're not stepping out of our bounds, our authority. We're simply saying, please look into this, get the proper information from the region, from the medical officer of health, and then and only then, under their guidance, bring that report back to council, at which time then, if it's in conjunction with the medical officer of health recommendation, that we would consider, that this council should consider the motion at that time. So I'm hoping that Deputy Mayor DePaula will have a second sober thought on this. And I do support the words that he said, but I think that Deputy Mayor DePaula, you can vote for this and still maintain your principles, which I fully agree with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. I have the same sense there as the fact that we're going out and asking questions and trying to see what we can find out and how it will be dealt with. So this is not putting anybody to work in any way. So I agree with this motion too. So at this point in time, all those in favor?
Recorded vote, please.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, voting on the motion, Councillor Liu. Sorry,
yes. I'm sorry, Liu or Munch?
Liu.
I heard.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Go ahead.
Recorded vote.
Recorded vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Heard you. Councillor Barros?
Yes.
Regional Local Councillor Pirelli?
What's wrong?
Yes.
Councillor Chan?
Yes.
Councillor Silovitz?
Yes.
Councillor West?
Yes.
Regional Local Councillor DePaula?
No.
Mayor Barrow?
Yes.
And Councillor Munch?
Yes.
That motion carries only.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, I am down at the bylaws at this point in time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I would note that, of course, under the approval of the agenda, bylaw 6920 was withdrawn, so you're approving every bylaw on the agenda except 6920.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for that?
So moved by Councillor Chan, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at hands here. Councillor West, Councillor Pirelli. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. The bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at this meeting, bylaw 9020, mover to seconder. I'm going to use the same mover, same seconder, if that's okay. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Motion to adjourn. All hands up, please. Yes. Approved. Thank you all very